are done. Lineups are being set. Yes, we are ready to start the NBA season. How's it going, guys? My name is Andrew. I'm your host of the Angle Fantasy Basketball Podcast. This is going to be a quick one today. We are going to be talking about, or we're going to be doing a draft overview of the official Angle Fantasy Basketball League. It is just a standard 12-team, 9-category league that is being run through Yahoo. And I have with me today the commissioner of that league, Mitchell. You excited for some basketball tomorrow, man?
Yeah, it's been a long time. Honestly, we've been blessed with the Olympic basketball in the Olympic qualifiers as well. We had an extended season, but it still felt long to me. And I'm just really ready to watch, all our roster construction come into work, especially in our dynasty leagues, and now heading into redraft. So I'm very excited, and hopefully we can make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I was getting starved for basketball there. There was at one point in that little dead zone between summer league and the preseason, I was watching a good amount of Boogie Cousins play 3v3 basketball. So that tells you how much I wanted basketball to come back. But now it is back. And we are going to review both our squads. We'll do that later on. And we're just going to review how the overall draft went itself. So it's going to be by round. It's going to show you picks per round. I picked at number 9. My team is known as Jonte's Parlays. And Mitch picked at number 11. His team is known as Fat Zion. So let's get into it. So here we are. What you're seeing right now is the first 3 rounds of the draft, 1 through 12. So in this draft, Victor Wembanyama went over 1 overall. Obviously, in dynasty circles and probably in a lot of drafts moving forward, Victor's always going to be number 1. But there is still an argument, at least for this year, and there's still plenty of people out there that would still pick Nikola Jokic. He went at number 2 to Richard. Doncic went 3, Shea went 4. So that's the classic top 4. They're going to be a top 4 staple within fantasy for honestly quite some time. I don't really see this top 4 order of Wemby, Jokic, Doncic, and Shea changing at any point soon. Jokic, sorry. So after that, at 5 went Tyrese Halliburton. Usually within that 5 to 6 zone, you'll see Tyrese or Giannis. AD went at 7, so Phil chose not to deal with Joel Embiid, which is totally fair because actually nobody in the first round chose to deal with Joel Embiid. So Jason Tatum at 8, Steph Curry at 9, Trae Young went at 10. So I took Steph at 9. I definitely debated for a long time between Steph or Trae, and that one might come back to bite me, but obviously, investing in one of the greatest players of all time is not the worst idea. Mitch, you went with James Harden at 11, and it was actually surprising to see Anthony Edwards not go in the top 10 because I've seen him go in the top 10 in a lot of mocks. So how are you feeling about Harden this year, and were you surprised also that Ant did not go top 10?
So, to your first question, I did take James Harden. I believe he's going to have an extraordinary year, similar to those Philadelphia 76er days where he averaged a little over 20 points, but he also led the league in assists. James Harden is going to be the system this year for the Clippers with the departure of Russell Westbrook and Paul George. So he's going to absorb all that usage. Kawhi Leonard isn't going to be healthy to start the season. He actually hasn't been practicing yet. So Harden's going to have a very early boost into the season. Yes, there is that belief that, James Harden's going to run out of juice at the end of the season, but the Clippers don't have a first round pick. They have the lower of the swap between them and the Oklahoma City Thunder this year. So they have every incentive to try to win, and James Harden's going to do his very best to help the Clippers make the playoffs. To your second question, I don't I know there's a lot of hype around Anthony Edwards, but I don't believe he really warrants a top 10 selection, but maybe he can prove me wrong. So there's a lot of excitement with that improvement for Edwards over there. So going into the second round, we do have Donovan Mitchell getting picked first in the second round, constant staple. Then it's Kevin Durant, someone who is traditionally always in the mid to late end of the first round in recent years, fell to me at number 2 in the second round at pick 14. Then it's Scotty Barnes, a new name to keep an eye on, who is traditionally in like the fourth or fifth rounds the last 2 seasons. Sabonis, and there's also Carl Anthony Towns, who had a resurgence in value. Everyone loves his landing spot at New York. So instead of like round 3, he's getting selected in round 2. Then we see Joel Embiid. So there's a lot of news, circulating that Joel Embiid isn't going to play back-to-backs for the rest of his career. which is a big concern. The 76ers have 15 games scheduled that are back to back. So automatically minus those 15 games and add on to those additional injuries. However, Joel Embiid is still pretty much a top three player in redraft settings. So there could be some value there if he's available at the right time in playoffs. Then we have Jalen Brunson there. Then we have LaMelo, Devin Booker. Then it's Chet Holmgren at the tail end of the second round, which is very interesting. Chet Holmgren is a second year player, and we hope to see a leap, but I'm not too sure that we'll see an increase in usage since that's not really his game. He's going to really need to, add the volume and points and rebounds for him to warrant a top 24 selection. Then we end it with a De'Aaron Fox and then a Damian Lillard, also a former first round staple, getting taken in the back end of the second round. So, any surprises here quickly before we move on, Andrew, to the third round?
Well, I mentioned earlier that Phil avoided Joel Embiid at 7 and took Anthony Davis instead, but he actually still ended up with Joel Embiid, but got him mid second round, which at that point, because when he plays, he's easily a top 3 player. It's just all about the missed games at that point. So obviously, I love the pairing with AD. And getting him in mid second round is not too bad of a gamble because he's not actively hurt. There's just the announcement that he's going to be sitting back to back. So maybe he is actively hurt too, actually. You just never really know with him. But no other big surprises. I know ADP wise, Sabonis is usually up towards the top of the second round, but I know like rank wise, he's usually towards the middle. So it really depends on what builds are going for. And I ended up taking him there. But yeah, everybody else, I definitely miss Dame's Portland time when he usually was at the tail end of the first round. I always loved during those days, a few years ago. I loved being pick 11 or 12 because I would get Dame pretty much every time. But yeah, no real surprises here. Second round went pretty standard. All right, so that'll go on to the third round now. We'll start moving a little bit more quickly here. We just wanted to get more detail into these first 2 rounds. Now, one of the first, because we tried to put out some notable reaches and steals. One of the first reaches occurred in round 3, early round 3. Bethany took Evan Mobley, who's got an ADP of 38, and this was at pick 28 that he took him at. So he reached backwards 10 spots to take Mobley, took him over the likes of Cade, LeBron, J-Dub, Paul George. So some good names there. Even Bam Adebayo and Lauri Markkanen, John Morant as well, that he decided to reach back over for Evan Mobley. So that was one of the first notable reaches that we saw happen. Other than that, Paulo going in within the 20s as well was pretty surprising. I know some people more value him at the 40 range, but obviously you'll find plenty of people out there that do value Paulo pretty highly in the right build. But the person who went right behind Paulo, LeBron, I would easily rather have, especially in a redraft setting where it's not dynasty. You don't need to worry about his age or what his future is moving forward. It's just LeBron James this year. So there's nothing wrong with that. He's going to put up great stats for you. So yeah, third round went pretty up to standard. Mitch, was there any surprises to you in the third round? Or are you ready to move on to the fourth round?
Yeah, we can move on to the fourth round. So to start the fourth round, we have Jaren Jackson getting selected at pick 37. Then we have Desmond Bane, who I selected. I love Desmond Bane personally because he can do it all. He's a great, wing player that can provide, 25 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists on good percentages. Kind of like a safe pick, but also someone who's very reliable, even along the likes with a John Morant healthy. Then we have Jalen Johnson here at pick 39, a breakout player that everyone is very excited about. And he is going to establish himself as that number 2 option in Atlanta. Then we have DeJounte Murray that Andrew took. So I'll ask you a little bit about him and your decision to take him over Fred VanVleet after we cover this round. Then we have Derek White, who I believe is another reach. His ADP is at around the 48 mark, but he was selected at pick 41. So Derek White is someone who has not, I don't want to say inflated rank, but he doesn't necessarily have the volume that you want in a top 4 selection. And he's someone who also relies on those percentage and stocks. So stocks vary year to year. So something a little risky and something to keep an eye on. Then we have Jaylen Brown at the next pick, Rudy Gobert at 43, Fred VanVleet, who we believe is a steal, who has an ADP at 38.3, who fell to pick 44. Then we have Miles Turner at 45, Pascal Siakam at 46, Zion Williamson at 47, another potential steal in the right build. We love a healthy Zion, right, Andrew? And then we
Hmm.
have Jimmy Butler there, a little bit of a riskier pick, an older pick at 48. So, Andrew, I know this was a topic that we've been discussing over the course since the draft of your selection of DeJounte Murray and Fred VanVleet. Is there any regret or remorse post-draft?
A little bit. So there's two main rounds where I have some regret in. One is right here in round four, and then the other one's way later on. I think it was round 11 or 12, one of those two. But with DeJounte Murray, the reason why I did this is I was going for a specific punt, and well, not punt, a specific build. Really, the only category that I've punted is blocks, and we'll go into more detail of my team once we focus on mine and yours specifically at the end. But I really also needed efficient scoring as well as good scoring too. So what tipped the scales for me? Yes, Fred is better at assists, better at from the free throw line, and I believe their steals are pretty similar. But the reason why I chose DeJounte was due to the higher field goal percentage. Fred's is pretty low, and the higher scoring output too. Now, the reason why I am regretting it a little bit is because Fred does have kind of cleaner numbers and especially better assist numbers. I'm still feeling okay about my assists, but I feel like I could have used more and Fred could have helped with that. And also, even though his field goal percentage is low, his shot volume is not super high. It's not as high as DeJounte's, but at least DeJounte has the higher field goal percentage. So I still kind of wrestle with that one back and forth. But at the end of the day, I'm happy still with DeJounte. It's not like I took somebody a lot worse. So we'll see how that one turns out. But I know like ranking systems, especially those online systems, generally do like Van Vliet's stat set a lot. But I am going for something pretty specific in my build, and also free throws is not something I'm really taking much consideration into in my build, which is why at the time I went with DeJounte. I started to focus into a punt pretty hard from like in between round fours until the later rounds where I started to go with pretty much anybody who I felt was in prime position to put up good minutes for me. And so, yeah, that's mainly why I did that with round four. So now let's move on to round five. Somebody I'm very excited about this year, Emmanuel quickly went. And then somebody who I'm not very excited about this year went at the top of round five, Mikal Bridges, went to Richard's team. Franz Wagner, I feel like is okay value, or not okay, pretty good value actually in round five. I've seen him go in the 40s, and I think this is early 50s where he'd be going at in round five there. DeMar Tobias, B took the risk on Kawhi Leonard mid fifth round. Jalen Duren, Zach LaVine. I went with Jared Allen in late round five, which I thought was not a steal, but pretty good value. I think he can at least perform, maybe almost 10 or so spots higher than where I got him at. So just like a tiny bit of value there, but nothing crazy. It just Jared Allen's a good staple. Miles Bridges went after him. That's someone who I closely considered in that pick as well. But since I got better scoring with DeJounte on the previous pick, I went with the more big man stats to accommodate with Sabonis, who's on my team too, with Jared Allen. Then you chose Jamal Murray at the end of the fifth round, and then also at the very end, Darius Garland went right after that. Any surprises to you on round five, Mitch? Are you ready to move on to six?
I mean, besides the point where Ben took Kawhi Leonard because he panic picked and the timer ran out. But other than that, it could pay off if he's back in within the next 2 weeks because as we know, healthy Kawhi is a first round player. So to start round six, we have Nick Claxton at 61. I selected Julius Randle at 62 because I
Damn
wanted to
you.
really build those volume stats with my team. Then we have Nikola Vucevic at 63. Andrew took DeAndre Ayton, a top 50 staple at 64, so a potential steal for Andrew there. This is our another reach that we thought was Walker Kessler at 65. So maybe Eugen was, desperate to get those blocks and rebounding numbers on high percentages. However, Walker Kessler does have an average ADP of 86.8, and he was selected at 65. So pretty big steal. I mean, not steal, a pretty big reach, especially in the mid rounds. Then we have a Brandon Miller at 66, expected breakout season there. Bradley Beal at 67, Anthony Simons 68, Brandon Ingram at 69, Cam Thomas, another guy who has a potential breakout year with the depleted Brooklyn Nets. Then we have Drew Holiday and Josh Giddey at 72. Any surprises here, Andrew? before we move on?
So I guess the surprise, well, it kind of ropes into the next round, so we can segue into this into the beginning of round 7. So let me ask you a question: would you rather have Cam Thomas in his current situation or Jordan Poole with full point guard duties?
Man, they're both very similar players, but I feel like Jordan Poole, he does have those assist capabilities and he does have honestly better steal numbers than a Cam Thomas. But if you're looking at just pure volume and someone who can provide decent field goal percentage that doesn't completely tank you, then I can see the argument for Cam Thomas. But similar players, but both have different weaknesses and strengths there.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Next went Michael Porter Jr. Hot take. Third in the 7th round went D'Angelo Russell. I would maybe consider him over both Cam Thomas and Jordan Poole, but it really depends on the specific build that you're going for. Jabari Smith, Ivica Zubac, Hartenstein win in the middle of round 7. Obviously, he could have gone earlier in different drafts, but at this point, people knew that he was injured. So this is a stash pick for Ben. Keegan Murray Kuminga went in 7. So I know that you told me I picked him a little early in the mock we did. I think it was in either 8 or 9 where I picked him at, and he went in 7 in this one. So that's a pretty big one. Austin Reeves went after him. That was my pick. Tyler Harrow, OG Anunoby. So you got him at the end of round 7. That's solid value there. And then Kobe White at the very end of round 7. So anything surprising you there? I know we already talked about Poole, D'Lo, and Kuminga. Anybody else?
I just the fact that I was able to get OG is very exciting. You know, this is kind of where I started to pivot to more like a punts points build. I don't really necessarily have the scores to keep up. I was already at a detriment by drafting James Harden at as my first pick. So OG Anunoby is a solid steal staple on good efficiency, which is what I was going for, and provides top 50 value. So having someone who I took in the 7th round at the late 7th round with top 50 upside is, very encouraging. Then we move on to the 8th round. We have CJ McCollum at 85, Jalen Suggs, who I took, kind of gearing and doubling down on those like efficiency steals type guys. Uh, at pick 86, then we have Nurkic, who you love or hate. No, you hate. You hate who you hate. That's Braxton, who doesn't like Nurkic. Or who likes Nurkic. And then we have Devin Vassell, who is a potential steal, by the way, another guy who could be like a 25 and 5 guy.
I was excited about that one.
Yeah, that's a really good one, Andrew. You just might have to wait 2 weeks, but the payoff is definitely there. Then we get Brooke Lopez at 89, Jalen Green at 90. Phil saved me the headache there. Big Jalen Green fan, but I know the frustration that comes with him. Jonas Valanciunas at 91, Bogdan Bogdanovic at 92, another guy that's very hot lately in redraft leagues. Jakob Poeltl at 93, Chris Paul, 39-year-old Chris Paul at 94. We expect a big year there next to Wemby. Easy assists, easy lobs. And Herb Jones and Draymond Green to round out round 8.
I feel like when I was doing mock drafts, I really rarely saw Chris Paul get selected, but like among analysts within the industry, I was hearing a lot of people talking about, oh, Chris Paul's somebody I want to take like round 8 or later to add on. And then he actually went for a pretty decent price in the auction industry pickup draft that Braxton and I did too, which we'll have a video out on that soon. But yeah, it was kind of surprising where I didn't hear a ton about him, like from the mock drafts that I did in other circles. And then pretty much like right as the season was about to happen, it's like, oh yeah, you need to get Chris Paul, around like at least after round 7 or something like that. So that was kind of funny to me, but it makes sense though. There's definitely some good potential there for him in that landing spot in San Antonio with just a skyscraper of a human being to always be throwing lofts to. Okay, so let's move on to round 9. So at the top of round 9, it was Derek Lively and then Kyle Kuzma. That's actually pretty okay value for Lively, especially if he does the breakout that I expect him to have. Third went Naz Reid, who I think is going to have a bigger breakout than him. It's very underrated, at least the situation that he's in. And even though he's still in a positional battle, it's easier for him to win that battle against Julius Randle than it is against Karl Anthony Towns. So still feeling very good about Naz Reid, the reigning 6th man of the year. So good pick there, Gilbert. Terry Rozier came next. Mark Williams was picked by Weiss, so went for the Mark Williams stash there. Hope to see him back soon. Jeremy Grant. Phil's just getting all the ballers, all the guys that have usage and score. So he went with RJ Barrett with his next one. Zach Edey, our first 2024 rookie to get drafted, was taken here in round 9. Next was Colin Sexton. That was from me. I was pretty excited about that one because this is already in the hundreds, and his ADP was like, or at least his value wise is pretty up there. So I was excited about that. Alex Caruso went next, Daniel Gafford, and Clint Capella. Mitch, any notable selections here in round 9?
No, I think we could move on.
All right, let's do it.
So next we have Tyus Jones, someone who really addresses the Phoenix Suns' needs at point guard. They needed someone to facilitate the ball and also take care of the ball. Phoenix is very careless in turnovers, so expect a pretty good bounce back year for Tyus Jones. I selected Trace Jackson Davis, someone who I believe has breakout potential. He's someone who could really do it all. He has high feel, good blocks, and Golden State is a team that lacks size, so I expect a great year from him. Then we have Dante at 111, Denny at 112. I think Denny is in a great spot, especially with Shaden Sharp out for, I believe, 5 to 6 weeks. So Denny is going to be slotted in at that starting small forward spot. Then we have Buddy Hield at 113. Kristaps with a stash by Phil. Could definitely pay off. Kristaps is a top 20, top 30 player when healthy. He's just going to have to wait till the end of December and early January for those payoffs. Then we have Keontae George at 115, Onyeka Okongwu at 116, then Amen Thompson and Brandon Pajemski, two guys that I believe have pretty solid breakout. I wouldn't say breakout potential, but hidden upside, I want to say is another word at the back end of the draft. And then we have Bobby Portis and then Taylor Hendricks at 120. Anything surprise you here, or did you just want to talk about your Denny Avdia pick here, which, by the way, I do love?
I did love the Denny pick too. I actually did kind of get sniped on Dante on the pick before that. I wanted to anchor down some threes, but I actually ended up finding good threes on the wire after that. So it all worked out. And obviously, I love Denny Abdia as well. Made a video about him. He's, yeah, definitely one of my favorite players just in general for both fantasy and in real life. I like watching him play. And then I'll just talk about, where they went in this draft is not surprising at all, but just the situation of Amen Thompson and Brandon Pazemski, like both on paper, you can tell like are both very, very valuable within a 9 category fantasy setting, especially when they get a lot of minutes. Just both of them are in a situation where they're in, it's more so for Pajemski here, but they're both in a pretty crowded situation where we're not sure if they're going to get the minutes stable enough for us to, fully reap the rewards of what their 9 category stat set's going to look like. Again, I think Amanda is probably going to get a pretty consistent playing time this year, but Steve Kerr has really kind of taken us all for a spin in what his full rotation is going to be. So, for especially for me in the industry pickup league for auction, I would love for Pajemski to get a ton of playing time, but we'll see how that ends up going. So let's go ahead and move into round 11 now. So at the top of round 11, we have we'll have to call it a stash now. Chris Middleton stash. Al Horford went after that. Terrence Mann getting drafted. That was a surprise. Cameron Johnson. Cam Johnson. Trey Murphy went in the back end in the middle of round 11. That could be solid value for Weiss there. Malik Monk, Scoot Henderson. So Phil went with the Scoot pick. Jaden Ivey, I'm pretty surprised that he lasted until round 11. I thought he was going to go a bit earlier than that. People like him as an upside play this year. I went with Josh Hart to fill out the build that I'm going for. Aaron Gordon went after that, and then you got Mike Conley, and then John Collins was selected at the end of the round. Solid round here. Mike Conley was definitely somebody that I was looking at, Mitch. You got me on 2 of those point guards that you took back to back. So tell us about the other one you got in round 12 now.
Yeah, so we start off round 12 with Norm Powell and then my selection, Marcus Smart. So tailing back to round 11, I really wanted to lock in those assists. We talk about categorical scarcity, and assists is definitely at the top next to points. So really hard to find in the draft, and I wanted to lock it in with Marcus Smart, especially since he's going to be playing that small forward spot, even though we do know he's a point guard. By the way, he just plays small forward on the Grizzlies, so he's going to have a lot of minutes, and opportunity there. Then we have Russell Westbrook at the next pick at 135, who I actually think is going to have a solid bounce back year next to Jokic. They're very depleted. In preseason, he was the first man off the bench. And I think he's really going to feast playing off the ball and also on the ball next to Jokic and without Jokic. Then we have Grayson Allen, who you picked, solid value. This year, he is going to be coming off the bench, so we don't know if he's going to see that top 100 value that we know and love, but at that 140 mark, still solid upside. Then we have Jaden McDaniels at 137, a player that we're not really fond of in a category league because of the lack of volume stats. And for someone who is a great defender, he doesn't necessarily rack up steals or blocks in the stat sheet. Then we have PJ Washington at 138. Then Kelly Oubre, who is a nice safety net next to Paul George. Ben Simmons, someone who might have a bounce back year. He did have some pretty nice flashes in preseason, but as you know, injuries are always a concern with Ben Simmons. Then we have DeAnthony Melton, Klay Thompson, which I think is actually great value. I know we
At
say
the end of 12,
threes,
that's nice. Yeah.
yeah, into 12 at 142. So Klay Thompson is someone who still is probably going to give you at least 3.5 threes a game, 3.5 to 4 threes, especially at your second to last pick. You really can't beat that value if you're looking to find an anchor in that category. Then we have Malcolm Brogdon, someone who's already injured to start the season. Didn't really understand that pick there. I'm sorry, Richard. Then we have Dyson Daniels, who is a great steal at the end of round 12. So, Andrew, can you round us out here at the final round?
Yeah, so round 12, like I mentioned earlier, round 4 was something where I have a little bit of regret, and then round 12 is something where I have a little bit of regret too, because this is where my queue got wiped clean, and then you sniped me on both Conley and Smart. So Grayson Allen, this is where the regret comes in because it feels like more of a panic pick. Obviously, if he does the same thing that he did last year, then that's huge, massive value. But he's coming off the bench now, and he shot so well last year that I'm really, really skeptical if he's going to be able to replicate that. So yeah, that's the one thing that still kind of bothers me a little bit. But obviously, it's at the very end of the draft, so if it turns into somebody else or turns into a streamer spot, that's fine. Or obviously, if Grayson does what he did last year, that's amazing too. But we'll see if that does happen because that shooting that he was on was absolutely insane. So let's round it out here. Top of round 13, Wendell Carter Jr., then went Jaime Jaquez, Rui Hachimura, Dennis Schroeder, Kelly Olynyk, all solid last round picks. Someone went with the stash of Shaden Sharp. Phil, as a true Lakers fan, went with the upside play of Dalton Connect. Let's see how that turns out. Aaron Neesmith, I took Andre Drummond, who I honestly think Phil should have taken to have as his Joel Embiid anchor. But we'll see. We'll see because maybe Dalton Connect will be better. This is another one where I wasn't planning for Alex Sarr to be there, and he was, so I didn't look for him, and he actually ended up going right after me. So I wish I had gone with Sarr instead as well. You took Andrew Nemhard in the second to last pick, and then Jeremy Shohan went with the absolute last pick of the draft. So let's move on to our teams. We'll start with mine first. So obviously this is not in the order that I drafted them in. And as you can see, I have both Paul George and Devin Vassell stashed in my IL here. I believe I got Paul George in either the third or the fourth round. I think it was the third round. And then Vassell was in the eighth round. So the primary thing I'm doing here is punt blocks. I'm trying to stuff up as much volume as I can with points, rebounds, assists, and steals, and three-pointers. I feel like I could use a little bit more three-pointers and assists. And so I feel like I also played the wire really well and caught a lot of people sleeping. There was not a lot of ads on the first day that ads became available. So I was able to add in Karis LeVert after the news of Max Strus being hurt. And I added in Grady Dick as well. That's somebody who we have some high upside for, especially with Bruce Brown being hurt. He's getting a lot more usage on the Toronto roster. So this is how my team shaped up. I have obviously the rebounding support with Sabonis, Allen, Ayton, off position rebounding like with Avdia, Josh Hart. I have one of the GOATs in Steph Curry. Was very excited with my value pick of Colin Sexton. I have DeJounte Murray, Austin Reeves, of course, so I always get to watch him when I'm watching my Lakers. And then some very high upside stashes of Paul George and Devin Vassell. So feeling pretty good about this one. We'll see how this one plays out. My name again, once again, is Jonte's Parlays. So let's move on to you, Mitch, where you are Fat Zion right here. And you got the solid fat picture of Zion from that Sprite commercial. One of my favorites of all
Yes,
time. All right, so
that
walk
is
us
the
through
GOAT
here.
picture. Yeah, so with my team, I went at first I wanted to have a volume build, but later on there was a lot of scarcity, so I made that pivot. So even though I do have James Harden, Desmond Bane, Jamal Murray, Kevin Durant, and Julius Randle, guys who do give pretty solid volume stats, but don't necessarily isn't necessarily their strong suits besides a James Harden. I kind of leveraged their uh pretty solid efficiency um to fill out the rest. With that being said, I kind of wanted to stay competitive with points, but then I had value plays and I ended up pivoting and selecting some more defensive specialists at the tail end of my draft, like an OG Anunoby, a Trace Jackson Davis, Jalen Suggs, Daniel Gafford, guys who I know who are going to provide me pretty solid steals and block numbers while also not really killing my free throw percentage. Yes, Trace Jackson Davis has pretty bad free throw, but if you look at the attempts and from last year, it's less than two. So don't let that fool you. This team is a pretty solid, efficiency wise, and also pretty solid in field goal as well. Having those anchors like a KD, Bam Adebayo along with Gafford definitely helps. And then to finish my draft, I finished with Marcus Smart, Andrew Nembhard, and Conley for those sweet, sweet assists. So I'm feeling pretty good about this team overall. Yes, I wish I would have had a top five pick to select, those, Nikola Jokic, Wembanyama's, SGA's, Luka's to really help anchor your team. But I had to pivot and go for more efficiency just because I really couldn't see the back end of the first of the draft competing with those guys. So overall, I'm excited and it'll be something interesting to monitor later on. And hopefully, we both meet each other in playoffs this year, Andrew, and maybe the championships. Who knows?
That would be nice. That would be nice. I mean, whether if we're good or whether if we suck, we'll continue to provide updates on how this league plays out. Hopefully, everybody will have some good, funny team names by then. I don't really see any team names besides ours two so far. So that will do it for us, rounding out what happened in the draft for the official Angle Fantasy Basketball League. So we're just doing this one redraft league this year, keeping it exclusive. Perhaps next year we'll do a little bit more. Or a different type of setting. But the next pod we are going to do is going to be covering, it's going to be with Braxton and I, it's going to be covering our draft process and build process for the industry pickup auction draft. So we are very excited about that one, and we managed to walk away from that draft with both Victor Wembanyama and Nikola Jokic on the same team. So if you want to find out how we did that, make sure to tune in to our next video, which will be out later on this week. Mitchell, you ready for the basketball season? Are you ready to get all your lineups set?
Yeah, man, all 10 of my teams. Can't wait to be busy.
All right, let's go make some money then. Thanks for coming by, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Captain, always gotta look for him. Beat so tight, I almost put a hook on it. Verse so fire, almost put a cook on it. Had this shit jumping, looking like I put a foot on it. Got 100 on a dash when I book Sonic. Only game that I play, got a rook on it. Got a flow so hard that it looks solid. Y'all be cynical.